We've had a very busy week in New Japan Pro Wrestling. The New Japan Cup is underway, and we've had some twists and turns already with a few more to come, especially I'm thinking in the War Dog Bullet Club House of Torture dynamic. We all have also seen some factions come and go, and a situation that we, quite frankly, haven't seen before in New Japan Pro Wrestling. It was a very interesting week of happenings and shows, and including the ones that didn't happen. We're going to talk about all of it, preview the week ahead. With Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome, everyone, to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Jeremy, we signed off last week talking about how we had this busy run of shows, and we did. There were going to be 5. Turns out there were only 4. We woke up Friday morning ready to watch night 1 of the New Japan Cup, only to find ourselves in the middle of a talk show at Korakuen Hall. And but we did end up seeing the New Japan Cup go all the way into the second round. It's be about half of the second round. We'll get the other half tomorrow. And it's been an interesting tournament, but it had a fit in the start.
Well, Steven, you remember those commercials when we were a kid? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? Yes. You know what I'm talking about? Those commercials?
Sure.
1, 2, 300. Well, how many heads to the ring post does it take to finally break that thing wide open?
Yeah, boy. Yeah.
Never seen that before. It did not break because of the amount of heads that cracked on it. Something very gnarly on that pole split it in twain
yes.
at one point. Not safe for anyone to put a whole lot of tension on. If that ring rope came at you when you weren't looking, you'd probably go down in a heap and not get back up.
That was some nastiness. But yeah, so what happened was they had set up the show at Korakuen Hall on the previous Friday. It was the 7th. Mm-hmm. Ready to go, first night of the New Japan Cup. The crowd was filing in. Everyone was arriving. The ring flat out broke. One of the steel ring posts basically snapped in half. Like you said, there are pictures of it. And they did not have time to get another ring to the building, apparently. And it was a rental ring. This is all told to us by Chris Charlton and Walker Stewart, who were kind of stuck filling its large chunk of broadcast time. And they said that they had sent the usual New Japan ring, the ring we saw at Fantastica Mania, the thing we usually see, off to Hyogo, which is where the first show on the road of the New Japan Cup was. So they sent that off to Hyogo to get ready. And that was going to be Sunday's show. And it was too far out of town when this rental ring broke to call it back. So they couldn't get it back. And apparently none of the other companies either would or could rent them a ring last second, which I've seen actually at the very low independent level, somebody calling another local promoter and just saying, hey, can we use your ring for the night? But in this case, no. And they just simply could not wrestle. So instead, the New Japan roster with a mostly full Korakuen Hall, a few people left, it looked like. The people that stayed were given refunds. They were given refunds for the night. And they also got a talk show where the people that were supposed to be on the card kind of came out. A couple of them just kind of did photo opportunities for everybody. And then some of them did a Q&A. Some of them cut a promo. Just a little variety show they got to fill the time. Very unusual situation. And Jeremy, the first thing that I wrote down was New Japan only has one ring. That they only have the one ring.
They have 2.
No, they don't. They rented the other one.
No, I think they had a standby ring, but they are making. I thought they had 2 the way that they implied on it, but no, they rented this one. You say?
Yeah, they rented. This was a rental ring. This is not. It was a rented ring. They said.
Well, I hope they got their money back.
I hope so too. It's a strange thing to me because I have been, like I said, I did some years as a referee and a heel manager and things at the very low, the indie level in Indiana and Kentucky and all that back in my younger days, like 20 years ago. And it's, I have been with some very, very small companies that had 2 rings. And I was very surprised that New Japan didn't have another one in like the Noge dojo they could run in for it or something like that. Just packed up. I bet they do now.
Schedule. Well, maybe. Yeah, they're going to have a couple extra on hand, or at least the equipment for it. What if they actually did have 2 rings, but they were both already off on the road because they already had a long travel day, like today, and they weren't going to have enough time to get the ring equipment in there on travel as well, because they've had a long couple of days of travel. And I knew that they had the off day today, basically, because of the long travel between towns on this road, on this journey.
Yeah, it was very strange. But anyway, what they did was they filled the time effectively. And there was a funny line that Chris and Walker, when they were talking at ringside there, just improvising, they said that if only Mystico were still here from Fantastica Mania, we wouldn't have any trouble filling 2 hours. That guy can fill 2 hours just working the crowd after one of his matches. He's so good at it. But alas, Mystico is back in Mexico City. So, yeah, there was a little bit of a Q&A with Kojima and Nagata, and I think Goto was out for it, and the fans were able to ask questions. I know LIJ just kind of did a photo op. So did United Empire, although they were funny with theirs. They kind of, what was it, a Dragon Ball Z classic pose they all did as a team?
The five characters in Dragon Ball Z doing their Shoten combination. I kind of tapped out after Desperado and ELP were gently smooching with each other. I thought, well, I'm good. Like, no issues, but I know what this is now, and I'm just like, have fun, guys. This sounds like you're taking the edge off. Everybody's enjoying themselves. It felt like when you were a kid and you had the fire drill and all everybody, you kind of had to like ad lib how you're going to entertain a bunch of kids for 45 minutes.
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
And it's fine. Like, it was whatever. I know that there were a ton of people that got a kick out of this, and it's a nice little history capsule, all the thing. But a good trivia note and like moving on. Best day to happen is the first day of the Cup. You can just load the next day up and move on.
Yeah, and Fernando Zayas is here. Hello, Fernando. Glad you're with us. He said, I would have loved to have been part of that Q&A. We found out a couple of things from it, as a matter of fact. One was that Goto, they asked Goto, like, how after his first defense, you know, his kids were there for the title win. What did they feel about his first defense? And he said by the time he got home, they were asleep. He didn't know. He's not even sure they saw it. But they were sacked out. I guess they weren't too worried about Dad there. They had confidence in him. But the other thing they mentioned, again, as they were filling time, that I thought was kind of cool and might be of interest to our audience, they are putting English commentary systemically on the archives of New Japan with context, meaning they're not trying to pretend the commentary was done live. They are going back with an English language track for the matches in the archives with an eye on history. Like a high-end
podcast on the show, because you're not calling it live, you're calling it as if you're watching it on a DVD. Like,
yeah, Kevin Kelly did some of these before he left the company, where they kind of went back and he just said, "This is a man." You know, as the action is going on, he would talk about this guy would go on to do this, that, and the other thing later in his career and stuff. And they're going to go back and do more of that, which I thought was pretty cool. So that might be nice. There
are plenty of matches that could benefit English historians that don't quite understand the language.
And if you think about it, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people have gone to New Japan shows and watched the matches and enjoyed them, but hardly anyone has seen anything like this. So for the folks that stuck around at Korakuen Hall, they were getting a show that is truly unique. Like no one's ever seen anything like that from the New Japan side, just the people in the building that night. So considering they got their money back and they got this little special show, not a bad deal overall. I think New Japan did the best they could with the situation they had. And poor Tanahashi standing in the ring says, you know, I've been wrestling for 25 years. This has never happened. And of course it happens when I'm in charge.
I did hear a story of a handful of people that this was the money that they had saved up for the show, and they were flying and leaving the next day. And they like, you know what I mean? Like there was no way of fixing it. Like this was the one show that they could afford. They planned, they did the whole deal, and it wasn't going to work out. And it's just like there's nothing you can do about it, but you just have to say, hey, like, I hear you and I feel for you.
Yeah, absolutely. If that is a situation, that's a tough break. But what can you do? I mean, you saw that ring post, Jeremy. There's no wrestling in that ring.
It's like the worst bad day you could possibly have. It's like you wake up and your breakfast is bad, and you like everything leading up to it is bad, and then you find out the show's canceled, and you're just like, shit.
Have you ever been to a show where the ring broke?
No, maybe.
I have one. I have one. It didn't break to the point they couldn't wrestle, but in the 1980s, I want to say 88, WWF, University of Notre Dame, Bam Bam Bigelow and One Man Gang, so the super heavyweights, right? Leaned into the ropes on a lockup, and the top rope just snapped, broke off, and they went tumbling, rear end over tea kettle all the way to the floor, and looked like One Man Gang kind of landed on his head. Turns out he did not. It's a bit of a scary sight, actually. And they were okay. They got back up, but the way they handled it was they took the bottom rope and made it the top rope. It was the rope that broke, not the tension, not the what am I trying to say? The hooks that hold it up there. It was the actual rope. And of course, WWF, the only company that actually uses ropes. They are ropes, not steel cable and things. But this rope actually gave way with these guys, and they took the bottom rope and made it the top rope and just wrestled without a bottom rope, which you can do. And so the rest of the card, that was about halfway through the show. The rest of the card was done without a bottom rope. That's how they handled it.
So, okay, let's say 2012, 2013. I lived in Santa Cruz at the time. And there was this place called Bocce Cellar, which was the diviest bocce bar, like shit house, like bar you could possibly think of, right? Yeah. And they hosted a wrestling show one night. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, it was $10 to get in, fine, whatever, cover. You get in there, and it's headlined, you can imagine, by the Stoner Brothers, which is the weed version of the Steiner Brothers. Just big old hawk-looking dudes in varsity jackets that reek of weed. And the story, and they're actually legit. You can look them up on Cage Match. They are a real pair of wrestlers. So the ring posts are holding up basically a mat that is 2 feet off the ground. Mm-hmm. So like they're in a pit, and the pit is kind of where the stage and where the music is, and it's big enough to hold a ring, but they don't actually have the ring post to get up. So they have posts on the ground with the ring that you hop into, but there's no real hopping into the ring or climbing it or anything. It just should have, and the ring ropes are just kind of holding together, but you're not really like running the ring rope.
God.
And so the whole thing, I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, were their ring posts working? I don't actually think that they were.
They might not have been.
So in my mind, I was calculating, was that the story? My friend, I have been to all kinds of wrestling shows.
All right. Well, there you have it. So the good news is the next day, Saturday, at Korakuen Hall, they were able to get a working ring, and they did have the show, and we got to see the first round of the New Japan Cup. And that's where we're going to begin, because we sometimes we'll start with the most recent show and talk about the other stuff before we did that last week with Fantastic Mania. This week, though, since it is a tournament and everything builds forward, we'll start with night one and work our way to the present time. So
I want to make sure they ran the actual order. So if the night one matches were in a certain order, they ran those. Okay, just want to make sure I had it.
Yeah, and what they did was they eliminated a couple of prelim tags to make these matches happen, just rearrange the card a little bit.
It was a great first night. I mean, like, you got a lot of cup matches instead of just like the two they originally planned. I kind of liked it better.
Yeah, we also saw Callum Newman's first batch back from injury in a preview tag, so he's okay. And then the first round began with Yuya Uemura and SANADA. And so Ishimori interfered a little bit on behalf of SANADA in this one, but Taichi came out and ran him off. So Uemura got a little bit of help from his stablemates as well. Uemura was about to hit something big off the top rope when Ishimori interfered. They started hitting big moves on each other around the 15-minute mark. Uemura got SANADA with a roll-up during a scramble. He stopped SANADA's O'Connor roll and got the Superman pin. That's the one where you kind of hook his 2 feet and you're spreading a Superman pose over there on top of him for the 3 count. Pretty decent match to start off with and set Uemura off on a strong path.
SANADA's not good anymore.
Nope.
He's just He's all character and
you
no
just didn't
technique.
care for it, huh?
This was supposed to be like a big match, like this is a just 5 guys story. Like you've been waiting for this for a while. He hasn't wrestled since August. SANADA came out there and it was just like, whatever. And it's like, Yuya's doing his best, but even he isn't good enough to, get something good out of a guy that's not trying or can't go anymore. I don't know what it is, but it's just like the emo aspect of it all is just kind of not working for me.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Well, there you go. And but that got him out of the tournament, so we can move on from there. So, and Fernando just says, "Rest in peace, Bam Bam." And One Man Gang's still alive at least, but Bam Bam has passed away. The George Gray One Man Gang still around, but it is sad that Bam Bam passed. We had then Yota Tsuji and Evil, which never fails to make my girlfriend laugh a little bit when they're naming all the things in the hype videos. That's Tsuji Yota, Naito Tetsuya, and then he gets his deep voice, Evil. That always cracks her up. Now it does me too because it makes her laugh. So now every time they kind of do it, it cracks me up. Scotty Wrestling is here. Hey, there you go, Scott Edwards. I'm glad you're here, Scott. Good. You've had a busy week. I looked
at those rankings on the Sport of Pro Wrestling. Scotty Wrestling is doing quite well in his.
He is. Pick. He is. So we had Evil and Yota Tsuji. So the tone was set on this where Dick Togo attacked Tsuji before the match, and they were beating him down. This, again, not a disqualification because it was before the match, not that there's any real way not much of a way to get disqualified in New Japan anyhow. But anyway, it was double team before. Tsuji rallied, threw Togo out of the ring, and the match began. But he was worse for wear after the double team beat down. He was selling quite a bit. Evil took a lot of this match. Only went 4 minutes and 53 seconds, but a lot of it was Evil beating on a dazed Tsuji. Tsuji went for the Gene Blast, but Dick Togo had recovered enough to shove Marty Asami in the way, and so Marty got smoked. After that, powder in the face, low blow, everything is Evil. The defending champion, the global champion, is out of the tournament, and Evil moves on. And this was starting to trend the way we thought that this is going to be a big House of Torture run here, and that he was setting up to face David Finlay. And sure enough, they got Yoda out of there. But that was the end of the defending New Japan Cup champion. Like I said, it was basically a beat down, Tsuji selling, so not a lot to this. But it accomplished the mission of getting Tsuji out of the match without him losing too much face.
It just felt fucking inevitable. You know what I mean? Like, you're just watching, like, clinical. We're doing this, like, and you know what House of Torture, right? Like, you know that you're getting this. You know that you're getting the whole fucking production, and you got to make Yota Tsuji not look like a complete fucking dork in this whole thing. I don't know if they actually managed to accomplish that. It just, it wasn't great. I'm defensive of House of Torture in a lot of ways, but this just felt like the worst way to do it. Do something that, like, just felt like everyone knew you had to do. So you could have done it better. I don't know. Like, it just seemed dumb. The whole thing was dumb.
All right. I mean, I think the whole goal was to protect Tsuji by just putting up so much stuff in him, in front of him that he can't be blamed for the loss. And I guess,
eventually he's gonna beat Evil, and he's gonna look great, and we're all gonna move on. And it's just gonna be one of those. He's gonna be set upon the hierarchy that he's better than Evil in all these ways. Evil did everything in his power to get one up on him, even though we all know Tsuji is a better, like, babyface than, in the hierarchy. He's gonna be higher up eventually, but we gotta get through Evil. Sure, let's do it.
Next match was Ryohei Oiwa and Chase Owens. Now, this is the one we had set ourselves up for disappointment because the winner was going to face Zack Sabre Jr. This is a trope of the New Japan tournament, the New Japan Cup tournament, that Chase Owens will get an upset victory in the first round and deny us a match that we were hoping to see. And this one shouted it out to us. In fact, it got meta. They went meta on us, Jeremy. They knew that. They played to that expectation. And in commentary, they talked about how Chase pulls off all these upsets at Korakuen Hall. So, of course, He didn't once they said all that out loud. And so Ryohei Oiwa ended up getting the win with the Arc Clutch. That is the name of his armbar move. That is a nod to his time in Pro Wrestling Noah, the Arc, A-R-C Clutch. And he got the submission. And he basically just dodged package pile driver attempts until he got the armbar in just under 10 minutes.
I mean, the package pile driver stuff, you were holding your breath each time he did, like, and then he would get out, and you're like, okay. Because
I think we might have lost Jeremy there briefly, but we'll go on in the meantime and talk through this. But yeah, they basically just played to our fears that we weren't going to get that Oiwa-Zack Sabre match. And we did indeed. So Chase out. And it was a time with Chase. He declared himself to be a war dog. That's an important point that we're going to be following up on. And Bad Luck Fale as well. So the Rogue Army basically has said that they are with the War Dogs in this battle with House of Torture for now. They're seeing. We'll see. I think that's going to take a lot of twists and turns. And but for now, Fale and Chase Owens have a tenuous alliance, I would say, with the War Dogs. Doesn't seem like everybody's totally on the same page there, and there might be
definitely a sense of intrigue, I would say. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. There you go.
Awesome. Sorry about that. My internet's been spotty for the last couple of weeks and getting kind of annoying in the middle of the day, but here we are. I was just saying, I'm going to eat humble pie in the next match, so I was never quite convinced that Chase Owens was the guy going forward. I felt like they were going to give us Ryohei Oiwa and Zack Sabre Jr. to make sure that you reestablished who was the leader of like TMDK. It's like you have both these guys as a single, but if you pit them one-on-one, it's like you still, even though Zach lost, he gets to reassert himself as the unchallenged, like the challenged leader, but victorious kind of thing. So that I like. Chase Owens, he's got a job to do. He did the job. Who knows how much longer he's going to be around, but the intrigue of Bullet Club is something that we're going to be unpacking through the rest of these matches.
There's a lot of that. We're not sure how long they're going to be going around. And so we'll get to those as they come up. After that, we had Gabe Kidd and Ren Narita. Now, you and I, Jeremy, were doing a lot of supposing that House of Torture, in order to keep their heat, to be this top heel faction, they just allegedly kicked out all these guys out of Bullet Club, even though they seem to have no authority to do so. And there's a big war going on now between House of Torture and the War Dogs. And we thought that was going to play out with the House of Torturing their way through the first round and getting the War Dogs out. They pulled a twist on us here. So Ren tried to attack Gabe Kidd early, but it backfired. Kidd beat the living tar out of him on the outside of the ring. And make no mistake, Gabe Kidd is over. They are loving this guy. He even hit a moonsault to the floor. He's changed his look again. He has tights now that have fighting spirit is on the back of them. He's just all about being the representative of true Tamashi. And the Bushi way, the warrior way. He even hit the Shibata dropkick in the corner and the Shibata pose of sitting cross-legged in the ring and folding his arms. He did that as a tribute to Shibata. There would be more tributes later on in the tournament once he moved on. Anyway, Gabe Kidd dominated this early. Just was walking the dog, as they say, on Ren Narita here. But Sho ended up interfering, no surprise there, and that allowed Ren to hit an overhead belly-to-belly on a chair, and that was on the floor. They were outside the ring at the time, and that turned things around, and Kidd began to sell for the next few minutes. There was a referee bump. House of Torture jumped in again. A lot of shenanigans. Ren hit him with a chair, got a blade job off of that. And then Ishimori and Maloney came down to help out. They ran off Yujiro and Sho. And but what I didn't expect was that there were no further shenanigans, and Kidd ended up fighting off the push-up bar. He hit a running knee and then two pile drivers to win the thing, and he eliminates Ren Narita. It was entertaining. The House of Torture shenanigans are always going to take things down a bit of a notch, but overall, once again, Gabe Kidd's charisma shone through in this one, and the fans were into it.
He's a star. He's not long for New Japan, guys. Like, hold on, as long as he wants to be there, great. But the minute he decides he's, got everything he wants out of the system, he will do well elsewhere because he's growing leaps and bounds. I
believe him when he says this is what he wants pro wrestling to be, though. And you're not going to be able to do this elsewhere. And I wonder if he's going to end up being like Zach where it just doesn't interest him that terribly much. We'll see what happens when the offers start coming in. But Zach has always just shown very little interest in coming over to North America full time. And right now, Kidd seems to be, New Japan through and through. Like, this is a cause for him. I don't think it's just a character. I think this is what he wants pro wrestling to be.
He is taking Dave to AEW. You could read into that, whether that's for storyline, laying concrete, or if it's to just familiarize himself stateside. I don't know. There's just he's got a star aura about him, and based off of the aggressiveness of North American companies to go after talent, it's not even that he would want to leave. It's that these companies might bid at him at such a level that you can't say no. Like, they're going to start competing with each other if they know that these guys are available. And,
I'm going to worry about that when the time comes. I just don't see it.
He's such a star. Yeah. Watching him in that ring and the way that the audience reacts to him, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, and then and in the end we had what was it? We had some other matches after that, but that was it. That was the main event of that one. And then we moved on to Hyogo there on March 9th. So anyway, that was the first round there. Went on to Hyogo. In Hyogo, that not a great show. But Hyogo did not have a great show. But they did draw 2,412, which is about the same as they did in 2024. So Hyogo shows up. The other thing I noticed was that they ran a lot of buildings that they only seem to run during the Cup. Don't necessarily go to these buildings the rest of the year. Korakuen, obviously they do. But this one in Hyogo, for instance, not a whole lot in that building since the New Japan Cup in 2024. So it seems to be a New Japan Cup stop. And in this one, we had some prelim stuff. We did see David Finlay in his first match back in a little. He was appropriately aggressive against Evil there. He and Kidd didn't have any explicit tension, but they seemed to be doing their own thing for most of the match. But that's kind of Kidd's character. And this was Finlay blowing through the henchmen on the way to the big boss of Evil in the next round. It was Finlay, Gabe Kidd, and Geto against Narita, Kanemaru, and Yujiro. And Finlay did not sell much at all in this thing. This was just him looking like a killer and moving forward, which I thought was the correct tone to strike, considering the angle where Evil kicked him out without him even being in Japan at the time.
Was this the first time SANADA with Finlay out of the ring, out from the back?
No, I don't think he was there for that one because I think he was in a different match that night.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah, where was he? Oh, he teamed with Chase to defeat Taka Michinoku and Yuya in the second match of the night. That was where SANADA was. He wasn't.
They cut something up at some point, and then they've been running with that ever since. I wasn't sure if that was the first part of it.
No, that would come up a little bit later. Yeah, and then they had a post-view match, if there was a preview, where they had the rest of House of Torture facing LIJ and Shingo, Yota Tsuji, and Bushi. And Tsuji wrestled pissed off in that match too, which was also good. Sometimes I think once the big matches happened, and this was, of course, Tsuji tangling with the guy that had knocked him out of the cup. Sometimes they have the I guess it's over type of attitude. But Tsuji wrestled this one like he was very angry, which I thought was smart. And then House Torture won again with low blows, which was also smart, to build them up.
The opposite of we're on to Cincinnati.
Yeah, there you go. After that, we had Oleg Boltin and Bad Luck Fale. And this one went 7 minutes and 11 seconds. And it was not a good match, but it did what it needed to do. There were strongman moves back and forth. Oleg ended up winning it with a kamikaze. It wasn't long, which is good. And I'd say don't try to have a match you're not capable of having. But Bad Luck Fale is very limited. Bolton is very green. And power moves, get a pinfall, and let's move on from it.
Muscle beats fat every time.
Almost every time. Yeah. And I mean, Fale's focus right now, he's out of shape. He's mostly running his training school in New Zealand, and he only pops over. They needed
bodies for the tournament. They were great. They needed some Bullet Club guys, perfect guys for the job. By the end of this, they'll probably be in a new faction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels like that. But we'll get to that as we see the things develop. Great-O-Khan then wrestled El Phantasmo, and the winner getting Shota Umino, which is so this was interesting either way in a couple of things. ELP missed an Orihara moonsault, landed on his feet, and so the Orihara moonsault is the one where you climb the ring post and then do the moonsault to the floor outside of the ring. And, that's a big impact on the knees right there. I wouldn't recommend doing that one too terribly often. But each got in a couple of near falls. But in the end, this was Great-O-Khan hitting an eliminator to win, which set up the rematch with Shota Umino.
I mean, this is everything that we thought it was going to be. You know, Great-O-Khan goes forward, faces Shota Umino. ELP and Great-O-Khan have another match. ELP goes over. Rinse and repeat. You've seen it every year at the Cup. Not particularly amazing, but I think it did its job.
Yeah, so Great-O-Khan with the win. And then we had Drilla Maloney and Tomohiro Ishii. So not a surprise. This was really good. Yeah. It was a very good version.
Really good match of the tournament, I'd say.
And it was a good version of an Ishii match. I mean, Ishii matches have that pattern to them, but they're always entertaining. They're always a lot of fun. This was a good version of it. And after 14 minutes and 6 seconds, hit the Drilla Killer and won the thing clean. So Drilla Maloney moving on in the tournament. Again, I have to come to terms with the fact that Tomohiro Ishii, who's been one of my favorite guys for a while, is there mostly to put people over these days rather than be the contender anymore. But nevertheless, this is a real good version of an Ishii match.
Yeah, no, I tried to sneak in what I was going to say and went with it. It's like, this is the first really good match of the tournament to me. I will say, and this is just for the people watching on the video, and you can go and check the match clips on Twitter and all that. Drilla Maloney, when I look at this quickly, looks like Will Ospreay to me, and it's starting to mess me up. When I'll glance over and I'll just with the coat and everything, and the scowly face. Like sometimes I just like, why is Will Ospreay doing that? Oh, that's not Will Ospreay, that's Drilla Maloney. And if it's just me, I'm gonna own it. But I want to hear from others if they've made the same mistake here. Drilla Maloney is making a name for himself. He is been given opportunities, and we shall see past April if the ball that he's been given to run with is going to be something sustainable. But it looks like people are leaving, and there's an opportunity for him to step up if given that opportunity. And for a guy in an interview this week that said he was only going to be with New Japan for 2 weeks, he sure made the best of his opportunity.
Tetsuya Naito and Callum Newman was up next, and Naito won this one with a roll-up, and I'm leading with that because it's the only highlight of the match. Naito was not trying hard here, and Newman is not yet at a point where he can drag something out of Naito if Naito doesn't want to do much, and Naito didn't feel like doing much in this match. So at least the show didn't end on that, but they ended with another tag team match dud instead. So when I realized this is the semi-main event, you're not getting prime Tetsuya Naito here if there is such a thing anymore. But pretty tough match to watch. Naito gets it with the roll up and on what was essentially a working night off.
They put the tag setting up the IWGP title match on after.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second.
Right. Yeah. You said most of it. I'm a broken record talking about Naito. It's whatever. I think he's got a role to play a couple matches down the line, and that'll be that.
And tough one. And then the main event was Goto and Tanahashi against Kojima and Nagata. Hey, 12 minutes and 15 seconds, and again, not very good. Goto can still work. Kojima can still work. Tanahashi has to pick his spots. Nagata is getting to the point where he's moving. A couple of years ago, Yuji Nagata was still having pretty good matches. Not New Japan main event level stuff, but yeah.
Manageable.
He's starting to look a little, and I don't mean this in the hitting people hard way, but he's looking stiff in the ring. Like the movements aren't coming as easy for him. It's a little trickier for him to move around a ring a little bit. So this one, when Kojima and Goto were in, it was fine. Keep in mind, we're also getting Kojima versus Tanahashi later on in this tournament as well. That'll be the New Japan Cup finals. We'll also have Tanahashi versus Kojima as a final road match. So a double preview match here, and it was a GTR finish on Kojima to keep the champ strong. But unfortunately, Hyogo, this was not a good show.
The tag battle of the dads is turning into the tag battle of the granddads right before our eyes. And, like there's only so many matches that you can get with these guys. And there's an argument to be made that when Tanahashi retires, that a lot of these guys should be like, you know what, we're out too. Because some of them can't go, like Tenzon, like you can see the atrophy. Nagata,
Tenzon has no business being in that ring anymore. Just doesn't. Love the guy. He's a legend. He cannot do this anymore.
Like Okamura can go as long as he wants. He's not really at New Japan all that much, but he's getting up there too. Like you watch him go, and you're just like, okay, my guy. Like we like you, we respect you, we appreciate everything that you've done, everything inside and outside of the ring, but like you might have to figure out another way to get a payday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly some of these guys are reaching up to that point. But I think they're having their last hurrahs here. So
yeah, and it might be like 2026, 2027. Like you think about talking about these guys in 2027. Do you really feel good about that?
No.
Right?
No, not at all.
Like the idea that they're going to be like on undercards in 2027 in 2 years from now, like we're 2025. There's a lot of people up and coming.
Tanahashi did it to himself, though. Once he announced his final road in his retirement, no one else is going to announce theirs.
No.
Why live in that shadow? Like, no way. We'll see what happens in 2026. But anyway, that was the end of the Hyogo show. So on March 11th, we went to the Okayama Zip Arena. 1,312 showed up. That was about up 100 from previous year, so a little bit of an increase. And we found out one other thing through backstage comments I thought was kind of interesting. When Goto was first starting out, he was an attendant for Yuji Nagata back in the day, which adds a little context to why this match and this pairing is happening for Goto. So he used to be Nagata's attendant, and then we found out that Nagata's current attendant is Daiki Nagai. So there you have it. Nagai said that he is. They don't always tell us who. Don't always. Sometimes we find out. We know that Yota Tsuji was Tanahashi's accord. He was the one that tossed and caught the air guitar all the time back in that time. But Daiki Nagai revealed that he is Nagata's attendant, and he thinks Nagata can do it. By God, he believes him, which is the exactly correct thing for him to say as a young lion.
Very political. Before we get into that next round, we put an infographic up here if you wanted to keep track. At this point, Evil, David Finlay, Yuya Uemura, and Yoshihashi are still alive. In the top left quadrant, you got Ryohei Oiwa, Zack Sabre Jr., Gabe Kidd, and Taichi still alive in the bottom left quadrant. In the upper right quadrant, we have Great Okan, Shota Umino, Tetsuya Naito, and Jeff Cobb still alive as of now. And then we got Drilla Maloney, TJP, Bolton Oleg, and Shingo Takagi ready to roll.
All right, so on to Okayama, and what we had here was a bit of a better show. This was a little bit better in Okayama, and let's see, we had the undercard stuff. Callum Newman, Jeff Cobb, and TJP faced the Bullet Club. That was Fale, Owens, and Drilla Maloney. Again, no Bullet Club tension, but it was again Chase and Fale were kind of off on their own, and Maloney was doing his own thing. This was not a
ambiguously bad duo.
Yeah. We also saw a preview of Kidd and SANADA as a team defeating Taichi and Takamichi Noku in a preview. Again, no real tension, just kind of some two people off on their own island. And the Taichi versus Kidd stuff was really good, which made me look forward to their match even more than I already was. So. What else do we have here? Oh, yes, that was where we had Shota Umino's first appearance since the match with Great Okan, where he shaved his own head. And this time Shota came out through the entrance, so no crowd entrance, no John Moxley style thing, same music. He came out in all white pants, but not the flamboyant colors. He didn't get the purples, didn't get the pinks, didn't get the blues.
However, it had all of the lace, and it had shooter on its back. Everything is all white. I think he went too far.
And then as his name was announced, he was in a hoodie. He was in a white hoodie. As his name was announced, he revealed that he has just shaved his head, completely bald there. And the match was fine. Not a whole lot to it. Ishii beat Jacob Austin Young in the match with a brain buster, but it was our first look at Shota Umino since his return. Or not since his return. That was his return.
I have comments about that hoodie. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
I'm a hoodie connoisseur. That hoodie looked comfortable. It looked thick and plush, but I got issue here. How is he going to keep that thing looking fresh all the time? That thing looked glisteningly white. He's got to have like a garment bag ready to go right outside the locker room to pack that thing right up. That thing's going to get dirty so easily.
Keep that box of OxyClean nearby. Keep the box of OxyClean nearby.
You've got to order like 50 of them or something like that. For this, I'm telling you, man, that thing is beautiful, comfortable, but easily dirty.
So at this point, we have the second round starting up. So Yuya Uemura has won his first round match. He gets Yoshihashi. This made me laugh, Jeremy. In a backstage comment, even Yoshihashi said, "I'm not sure why I have a bye in this tournament." Neither are we, brother. We're not sure either. But here
randomized.
We are. It was a good match, though. Lots of chops early in this one. Lots of chops. Yoshihashi, though, it's interesting. He has a natural underdog appeal to him, and that had some of the people in Okayama cheering for him without them really turning on Uemura. But he just has that thing where you're hoping he gets over the humps one day right there. In the end, though, he succumbed to a deadbolt suplex. Yoshihashi's main function is as a tag team wrestler these days. So this is a match he can lose here in this tournament without hurting himself. And then he can slide right back into Bishamon or anything else down the road, and you still take it very seriously. But in this case, this was exactly the right move. Uemura is the guy they need to put a little bit of singles steam behind, and Uemura moved on to the quarters.
Yeah, Yoshihashi is now the perfect gatekeeper for these younger guys. He serves that role as you got to get past him to start considering like higher than mid-tier, being a tag champion and friend of Goto and all that. Great role for him. He's just the perfect guy for that. And Yuya Uemura is starting to heat up. There's a sense that throughout the tournament, like he was just kind of in second and third gear. And this was the first where I just kind of felt like, okay, he's starting to turn it on, but he's not quite like turned on all the jets yet.
Yeah, and Yoshihashi mentioned something in backstage comments after this match where he said that Uemura is the one that reminds him of Tanahashi. Yeah, he said, having someone who has wrestled Tanahashi a lot during Tanahashi's prime years, he said that I felt that from the lockup, that he's just that kind of guy. And it's interesting how many wrestlers have said they can tell how a match is going to go from the lockup. It's just sometimes it's just a thing. You just have that instinctive feel. And he said that he felt like Tanahashi in that moment, and it seems like the next Tanahashi could very well be. That's a tall order, but I took that to be what it was, and that was a strong compliment from Yoshihashi that Yuya Uemura might be the next big thing.
The perfect mix of Tanahashi and Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that. Yeah, the selling.
There's a lot of Ricky Steamboat in Yuya Uemura. There's a lot.
And after that, we got the match we were hoping to see. It was Zack Sabre Jr. and Ryohei Oiwa. This is the best match of the night, of course. How was it not? Zack sold his ribs quite a bit in this one, and then he also sold his wrist when Oiwa yanked on it hard coming out of an Irish whip, and that played into that new submission arc clutch move that he uses, the armbar type of thing, and so that works. So now Zack's selling his wrist throughout a lot of the match, and of course Oiwa was going to try to clamp on that arc clutch. The crowd watched attentively but didn't really react big until Zack hit the Zack driver. Once Zack hit the driver, they recognized the signal that the guys were getting close to home, but they didn't really want to root against either one of them. And we talked about this before, that the fans in Tokyo and in Osaka are more boisterous than most. And this is a house show out in a smaller town, and it's in an attentive crowd, but you tend to get more applause than vocal cheering these days. It's unfortunate. I wish that the more livelier crowds would come back. And if you go back and watch old matches there, you see how hot the crowds used to be. But nowadays, if you aren't in Tokyo, and even if you are sometimes, or Osaka, it can be a little quiet. They're watching, they're enjoying the show, but I'd like them to be a little bit more demonstrative. But finally, they got into a little bit after that Zack driver. Zack did kick out of the Dr. Bomb, which is Oiwa's setup. Oiwa went for the grip, the spinning clothesline, the lariat, or whatever you want to classify it. But Zack avoided the grip and got Oiwa in a crucifix coming out of that to pin him. It was very good. And the other thing I did notice here, Jeremy, is that it felt like they were really holding back a few things, which leads me to believe this is not the last time in the near future we're going to see this match. Perhaps they will be in the same G1 block or some such. But you knew that they were giving us the appetizer, but not the main dish for these two.
I'm glad we got it. I'm glad to see that it won't be the last time that we get this match. They could end up being friend rivals in the future. Yeah. They laid a lot of groundwork with this match that I'm not sure a lot of people realize, but this is framework for a lot of the mythology for TMDK going forward, or what will be TMDK and rolling out of that, because there's only a matter of time before Ryohei Oiwa can be in Zack Sabre Jr.'s shadow.
Yeah, and Zack even mentioned in post-match that TMDK is supposed to be a competitive faction, meaning unlike, say, War Dogs, which is there for David Finlay and to help David Finlay, TMDK is not. We're trying to have iron sharpen iron. That's why Oiwa was recruited to TMDK, because they want training partners and they want rivals. They want that type of thing. So it's a thing where these guys can have a pretty rough match against each other, an intense match against each other, and still be perfectly fine storyline wise, whereas that's not always true in other factions. So for instance, like no one in LIJ is trying to really pass Naito. Everyone's trying to do the best they can, but it's Naito's faction. And what Zack is saying, that in TMDK we're all supposed to be fighting for that top spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on that bone, man, and can't wait to see where we're at. All right, what we got next?
David Finlay and Evil. So this one. Now, Kidd and Gedo came out with Finlay. They came out down the aisle. Now, Drilla Maloney was on English commentary with Walker. We got Chris Charlton for the Korakuen Hall shows, but of course, Charlton doesn't tour during the week. So but Gedo waved Drilla Maloney. He leaves English commentary with Walker, comes into the aisle with him. They line up and rush the ring. They're not going to take any more crap from House of Torture. Everyone ended up running off to the back after they brawled around the building for a little while. But Dick Togo did come back, and there was a little bit of Togo interference as it went along. Gedo also came back out. And at one point, there was a low blow, and Togo got up on the ring apron, but Gedo was there to stop him. And they tangled up with Goto, and through a very convoluted sequence of events, ended up throwing the powder in Red Shoe's eyes accidentally. Togo was going to try to throw it into the eyes of David Finlay, but he and Goto fought so much that ended up going right into poor Red Shoe's eyes, so he was out. And then we saw the beginning of something that would play out for the next couple nights. SANADA tried, and I say that with air quotes, tried to help, but he ended up hitting Finlay and then hitting Gedo. Each time he charged in, the member of House of Torture that he was supposed to hit just managed to get out of the way. And that was used to tease tension within the War Dogs, where after this one, Finlay and Gedo were giving SANADA some long glares like, was he really trying to hit the House of Torture, or was he trying to get us? And in the end, though, Togo and Evil got in the ring, hit a magic killer to tease the screwjob victory. But then they fought to the outside. Finlay picked up Togo and threw him into Evil at the 19 count and slid in for the count-out win, which surprised... Again, each of these things that kind of surprised me, but I wasn't disappointed. Finlay does move on, and Finlay stared down SANADA afterwards. So at this point, Ren Narita's been eliminated. Yes. Evil's now been eliminated.
Yes.
And you're just thinking, wow, House of Torture really ended up looking in a little incompetent. Are they going back to them as kind of comedy bumbling figures like they were for a while? Not quite yet. They were just setting us up for that for later.
This was the match where I realized that SANADA is basically doing a bad impression of what Orange Cassidy would be like if he were a heel.
What?
He's lumbering and he's moving around and everything's slow and everything's like dramatic and they're just like it's over characterized. But if like Orange Cassidy did it, this would be his gimmick and he would do it well, even as a bad guy, like moving slow and like beating the guy like slowly, almost obnoxiously. Like SANADA's moving very, very slow. Like there's no crispness to anything. Like even when he did those rehearsed like moves of getting out of the way and ducking and knocking Gato out, it just looked so lazy.
Okay.
Just like there wasn't any heart to anything that he was doing. And it's part of OC's gimmick that he wrestles like he's almost like lazy but competent. But if you had a heel version of it, I feel like this is what you would get.
Okay. Yeah, it's a thing with SANADA. I mentioned that he's a black hole of charisma. And I was hoping that this War Dogs thing might energize him a little bit because when he turned on Taichi, it looked like he was into what he was doing. But now I don't know if he got a wind of the direction the whole thing was taking and it's taken the wind out of his sails. But
energy.
He seems kind of uninterested a little bit sometimes, especially during his matches. But now they moved on to Ehime, and the reason I go right to this is because we're talking about SANADA. What they're doing now is teasing out this whole whose side is he actually on thing, because each night he's starting to take a shot at the opponents but catch his own team. Mm-hmm. And they're doing this each night with the idea that no one's really sure if he's turning on them or if he isn't. The thing is, they have Ishimori just declared himself a war dog. Chase and Fale declared themselves war dogs. And, SANADA didn't declare himself a war dog. We found out that Finlay had recruited him. But who's a mole here? Because you just have this real sense that there's more twists to the House of Torture War Dogs thing. That's too many War Dogs, isn't it? And they don't really fit with the violent intensity of the others. So something's going to give here at some point.
What if we got a third faction born out of two factions?
That's absolutely could be. I mean, we absolutely might get something like that. But
I don't know when Jake Lee's coming back, but he was just doing some acting, so he's clearly not like completely laid up. So you've got that, and maybe Gato's done with Finlay in a lot of what I mean. Like there's a lot of ways that it can go, and I'm not necessarily sure that Finlay's direction is going to be entirely focused on the IWGP World Title.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lot of questions, isn't there? Like, and one of them is David Finlay staying in New Japan long term. We don't know that, so all that stuff is going to play into this storyline. And so I mentioned
that a little bit later.
Yeah. So the first tournament match in Ehime, which was just under 1,000 people in Ehime, which is a little bit up again from last year. So some good signs. They either maintained or were up from 2024's New Japan Cup. Taichi and Gabe Kidd had their match in the second round, and this was pretty good. Lots of pre-match talk in backstage comments on the previews about King's Road, the old All Japan style, the Misawa, Kawada being the key operative in this one. Taichi is a Kawada disciple, and we saw a lot of Toshiaki Kawada offense here. And we got Kawada kicks. We got the stretch plum, which was Kawada's submission move. We even got he even did Kawada's power bomb, which Kidd took right on his head the way Misawa used to. And if you know about that, maybe not, Gabe. Maybe not take it like that.
Not the greatest idea.
Not the greatest. Either way, I understand. Taichi even threw in some jumbo Saruta. He hit the axe bomber, hit the jumbo play to the crowd move where he just raises up his hand and then shouts, and then caught a back suplex with a bridge like Jumbo's old move. We don't see too many nods to Jumbo Saruta in New Japan because he was, talk about an all Japan guy through and through, right. Jumbo. But anyway, a lot of that. And then, of course, Kidd was doing his stuff, which is reminiscent of Shibata and whoever else. Kidd hit a pile driver, but he ran into a big kick when he attempted his running knee. The big moves portion of this match was really, really good. And one of my favorites was he went for the pile driver on Taichi, where Taichi's kind of feet go up in the air, and then he manages to get himself back on the ground. And then he managed to turn that into a Black Mephisto attempt, which is really cool. Kidd did end up hitting the pile driver. But what we didn't see coming, and they did a good job of not really catching this on camera to set it up, he hit the pile driver, covered, 1, 2, all of a sudden there's no referee anymore. Zip, right out of there. Now, whirls around, and it's Ren Narita who pulled the referee out on the cover. House of Torture then attacks Gabe Kidd as the referee's down on the floor. They make a point of showing that Taichi is not in on this. He is out cold in the middle of the ring, like not moving while all this is happening. Has no idea what's going on. They ended up clocking Kidd with a push-up bar outside the ring. Kidd was counted out. When Taichi came to and was told he won the match, he was furious because the build-up to this was all about, let's do this King's Road style. Let's just have a war. Let's just fight. It's going to be fighting spirit. It's all about that whole thing. And so, he was tossing chairs around the backstage comment area. Taichi was just saying, you ruin everything. What is the matter with you? Like, what could possibly be wrong with two guys just squaring off and you still come out and screw up my life? Anyway, Taichi does move on in the tournament, says, I can't feel good about this win. And now he has to face Zack Sabre Jr. So when we talked about this tournament, we thought it was going to be House of Torture screwing the War Dogs out of it. Still might be, just maybe not the way we thought.
So far, yes, it seems like it's kind of tracking that way.
Yeah, I think we're going to end up being right, but just maybe not in the way we thought.
Different route to the same destination.
Yeah, I'm still going to take credit for
it. in this way, like there was history between Ren Narita and Zack Sabre Jr., but there's a lot more history between Taichi and Zack Sabre Jr.
Dangerous Techers.
I wouldn't be surprised if Taichi beat him.
Yeah, you might. He might.
And you have one old guy, one new guy, or like you got Finlay or Yuya, and then you got like Zack Sabre Jr. or Taichi. No one thinks Zack Sabre Jr. is winning this, but he could certainly go to the Final Four. But it would make more sense to have a guy with some legacy with Zack Sabre Jr. just be the guy to knock him out. And you can do that, but do you want to do that? Where they can go with after the Magic of the Quadrant. Pretty cool.
I'm still leaning towards Zach in this one, but it's 60-40-ish. I can see them maybe it'll be Taichi. I can also just see Zach getting the win in the end and, shaking his hand afterwards, with respect to him.
Taichi's lost a lot. Like he's eaten a lot of pins, and him getting a win over a former world champion. And then going on to, lose to the new guy in his own faction. Like, I'm not against that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's been an interesting story. And I like Taichi. So if they want to give him a boost right here, I'm in favor of it. I think he works. He works really hard.
There are less and less guys of his generation that they can count on. And if he's willing to go, put him to work.
I still just think back to a question we had on this show a few weeks ago. If Taichi had found his groove a little earlier in his career, because he was just miscast as a junior heavyweight, which weight-wise, it was correct, but he was too tall for it. He wasn't quick enough for it. And if he had just kind of bulked up a little earlier, he found his groove when he got into some of these matches with Goto and Ishii, the Bruisers. He really showed up against the Bruisers. And if they had figured that out faster, and maybe when he was in his low 30s, he started having those never open weight, I think he would have been in that mix with the Maccabees and the Gotos and Ishiis when that was just the BMF title, original BMF never open weight title. I think Taichi might have fit in that era. And but man, by the time they figured it out, it was just a little too late, wasn't it, for him to really have the prime run.
Do you think it would help him now if Miho Abe was still around?
That was a great act. I think they probably have moved on from that, and Mio ain't coming back. I don't know if you've seen her social media, but you're having that on the show.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay.
She's wilding out. Good for her. She's gone much more adult than when she was when when she was in New Japan, she had been a Miss Universe contestant, for the love of God.
Yeah, that might be gratifying for some fans of that.
Well, but right now it's she's got some things on her socials that New Japan
Cool.
can't be seen with at the moment. But either way, but it was a really good act. It was a lot of fun, and I wish sometimes that she could come back for the big shows. Because I do enjoy that part of it, but. They had an interesting relationship for wrestling because even when he was a heel, he didn't mistreat her, and that's very rare in wrestling. They actually seem to genuinely like each other, and I just thought that was different. I enjoyed that they did that differently than Yujiro and Peter, which was its own thing, and then certainly in the United States, it's always the heel mistreats the valet and all that stuff. But
yeah, there's a little bit of respect there. I was just kind of like what that their act was. I don't know. It was just kind of like, okay, it works. I do think that moved on from it, but I just wondered, had things been different, world title, all these things.
If he ever gets a world title shot, I'd love it if they brought her back just for that, like this one time,
like that one big night for him, kind of thing. But who knows if that'll happen? Who knows? All right, let's get on to the next one.
After that, we had Shota Umino and Great-O-Khan. So this is obviously a key rematch for Shota. He lost the main event of Wrestle Kingdom to Zack Sabre Jr. His next singles match was against Great-O-Khan. He lost that as well. Downward spiral all the way. Now they're back in the ring against one another. So again, it took the crowd a while to get into this one. There were a lot of Umino kickouts to show his heart in this match. Great-O-Khan was on offense for an awful lot of it. It was a lot of Umino getting beaten down. He would make his little mini comebacks, but Great-O-Khan would cut him off and more selling. Shota rallied. He ended up winning with a move called the second chapter. And this is not his usual finishers. He did not do ignition much. I don't think he did an ignition in this match. He certainly didn't do any of the Moxley stuff. This was a move that more closely resembles sort of a Northern Lights bomb almost. Not quite that, but a version of that. Second chapter is what it's called. Crowd did get into it down the stretch a little bit, but I think they're still in wait and see mode about Shota here. And afterwards, intriguing to me, he did absolutely no mic time whatsoever. He took the microphone, sighed, bowed, and then walked out. And didn't do any backstage comments either. Great-O-Khan just kind of lamented that they had lost to Umino and that they had it in their hands and let it go. But no words from Umino afterwards.
Have they done enough with Umino? Like, do you buy it? Like, he shaved his head. He is cold and emotionless. He's not quite a young lion, but he's back to basics. But he's wearing all white, and he's wearing like an all white pattern of his gear. I don't like the white like version of a shooter, like with the shooter on his butt and all this stuff. I just don't. I think he needed to take it down even more. Like he needed to shave down the basics even more. Like it. I'm not 100% sure he's committed to this, but he's trying to do everything he can to commit to it as much. I'm not sure he's connecting with it. I'm not sure if the audience is connecting with him, but I also don't know if this is like meta and intentional, that it's trying to be like intentionally obfuscating.
Yeah, I think it's more that. I think it's more that I think they want us to wonder this.
Yeah.
At this stage, like they've only shown us a little bit. He's only shown us a little bit. I think there's going to be more as the tournament goes on. But I right now, I think they want that sense of mystery. It's like, what is he now? Is he still on our side? Is he turning? Is he? I don't think they want to tell us yet.
I think you're right, and we shall see. I do think, based off of this result, he is going very, very far in this tournament.
Yeah. So we will find out as the week moves on, because it's another busy week. We have 4 shows again to catch up with by the time we reconvene here. In fact, the tournament will be over next week. And let's take a look at what we have coming up on tomorrow, Friday, March 14th. They're in Osaka. And this is, of course, we mentioned, Jeremy, that Edion Arena shutting down. And right now they are running the Grand Sumo tournament in Osaka. So Edion Arena is not available. And then after that, it's going to be undergoing an extensive remodeling. So in a different building in Osaka than usual. But as of right now, Grand Sumo is going on. So that place is a little busy right now for a house show. But March 14th in Osaka, second round matches. We're going to see TJP and Drilla Maloney. I think we're headed towards Shingo and Drilla here,
Yes.
but so I think that there's probably going to be another win for Drilla. Plus, he's in the middle of this whole storyline, and TJP really isn't at the moment. So my guess is that this is going to be a Drilla victory. And then we have Oleg Boltin and Shingo Takagi. It's going to be very interesting to see what Shingo gets out of this. But
future never open weight title match.
I mean, Shingo's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to this one. And then the last one, the main event, something we need to talk about a little bit, maybe more than we would have before, Tetsuya Naito and Jeff Cobb. And the serious question here, Jeremy, are we nearing the end of Jeff Cobb's run in New Japan? Possibly. There are rumors out there that he is headed back to North America full time. Well, we don't know that. That's not 100% confirmed at this point at all. But there's a rumor that Jeff Cobb may be WWE bound. He's facing Tetsuya Naito. And again, the United Empire as a whole just hasn't really been right since the departure of Will Ospreay. It's been a little rudderless. And part of that might be is when you have a faction with so many foreign wrestlers that it's hard to make long-term plans in the current environment.
Yeah, so I don't know anything. I know people who know things. They've told me nothing.
We're hearing things.
But my instinct is that this is true, and Cobb is wrapping up with New Japan. It does make it interesting. WWE has listed him on their internal roster, but he was just yesterday booked.
What does that mean, Jeremy, the internal roster?
It means it's someone that they have signed or is like listed as ready, someone that they are planning for. In some way, shape, or form.
But not on anything that fans would see if they went on a WWE website.
This is documentation, backstage, internal documents that have been then relayed to Fightful. If it were me and it was Jeff Cobb, I would have at least waited until the match tonight for this to get out. But
it might not be Jeff's choice.
Don't think it might not even have been his kind of choice. Like this, Jeff Cobb is a notoriously secretive man about his plans, and nobody. If he told somebody, it was his circle, and they weren't going anywhere with it. But good on them, good on him. I think Cobb can get the bag in WWE. I think, like, if it were me, I would actually just, say screw it, give him the Money in the Bank briefcase this year, and just kind of like shake it all up, because at some point you just kind of have to throw it all in there. Does he wrestle in Windy City, Steven?
I have no idea. I mean, if he's going, it might not. That's the whole thing. If he is leaving, then it's really more up to who he's signing with, how long what shows he works, than the other way around.
Yeah, there's a cooperation thing that I'm not sure is definitely there between New Japan and WWE in terms of courtesy, but appreciate Jeff Cobb while you got him. This could be the last match tonight. He could have a handful of matches left, but
we don't know. We just don't know.
Countdown is on.
There's a little bit of smoke. We'll have to see if there's fire. It's the bottom line on that. So the jury's out on whether there's fire. So that is Friday, March 14th in Osaka. Watch Cobb win now. Hit Tour of the Islands and win. Then we'll have egg on our face when we come back. But on Saturday, March 15th, there'll be an Aichi at the Dolphins Arena. And that is where we are going to get the World Heavyweight title match between Hiroki Goto and Yuji Nagata. And cool video, by the way, that dropped, Jeremy, of it's about 10, 12 minutes. Highlights and finishes from Yuji Nagata's, at the time, record-setting 10 defense title reign in 2002 and 2003. Worth your time to go back and see that.
Well, I will go back and see that because I did not, in fact, check that out. You know who else is somebody that has had rumors about potentially whether we see him going forward is Finlay, but I just wanted to make sure we touched on that before we finished talking about Nagata and Goto, because he could be the guy that faces Goto after this match with Yuji Nagata. I think it's a box checking match rather than like a must-see feud between the two. It feels very ceremonial and old guardish rather than, like, this is a match that you must see. It's going to be on the very consequential 15th alongside the semifinal matches, all the 4 semifinal matches. So they're intentionally putting quarterfinal matches to get into the semifinal matches. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you. So, they're trying to put it in a place of prominence.
Yeah.
I think that it's not going to be the best match on the card that night, but we will have a pretty good idea of who is going to be the next person to challenge based off of who's left of the final 4.
Yeah, and so the other quarterfinal matches that we know of for Saturday, David Finlay versus Yuya Uemura, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Taichi, and then the other one will be determined by Friday's results. So we will see if that ends up being, some combination of Bolton Oleg, Shingo Takagi, who will move on there. That's going to tell us. So
there are 4 people alive in the Drill Malone TJP Oleg and Takagi bracket, but there's 3 people alive in the Shota, Naito, and Jeff Cobb bracket.
Right. So we'll figure all that out. So so Friday's show will determine the full lineup for Saturday, as always. Then after that, they're all coming in rapid succession, because then Sunday they're in Shizuoka, and that is the only thing that's been announced for that is that there will be one single semifinal match there, and then Monday, March 17th in Fukushima, the other semifinal match will take place. No other matches announced because kayfabe, we don't know who's in and out of the tournament, blah, blah, blah. And then we have a couple of days off, and it's Thursday, March 20th in Niigata for the New Japan Cup final. And then the other featured match on the show, the final road kinship match between Hiroshi Tanahashi and Satoshi Kojima.
And then we will be back later that day to talk about all of it here with you. Speaking of strong style,
another very, very busy week. So so at this stage, why don't we put the bracket back up, if you would, please? I'm just going to take a look at this. Let's look at the graphic here. At this point,
who are your final thoughts?
I really think that Finlay could, but with that foreshadowing they did, where Ren Narita came back and screwed over Gabe Kidd, I'm worried about Finlay getting hosed over by Evil in the next round right there. Aren't you?
Oh, I think rat fuckery is happening. Absolutely.
So if it's not David Finlay, I think we're back to my original pick, which is Shingo in a way here, just to set up, because the winner gets here, the winner of Nagata Goto, which we're assuming is Goto. I think everybody would be utterly astonished if Yuji Nagata wins on Saturday. So assuming it's Goto versus Shingo is a really, really interesting world title match. I think that could sell tickets. And that would probably be a better match than anything Tetsuya Naito could give him.
Mm-hmm. Shota just had an IWGP title match. Yeah, he literally just at the Tokyo Dome.
And I don't think Zach is quite. I agree with you that Zach might not quite be the answer for a world title match right now. Mm-hmm. And then Yuya Uemura, I wouldn't do Uemura versus Goto, because I think they want the fans squarely behind Uemura a lot, and they'd be behind Goto in that match. You don't want the crowd cheering against Yuya. I think that's a mistake for New Japan.
You don't think that they can curate a situation where you find yourself cheering for Yuya against Goto?
No, Goto's such a sentimental guy right now. There's so much sentiment on Goto's side right now. I think you either do a heel, or Shingo Takagi is the kind of guy who everyone respects, but they would still cheer for Goto against. That would be my pick. Now, you really can't leave off Shota Umino out of this either. No. You can't forget about him. And Shota Umino and Goto, especially if Umino plays it like he's being a little bit of a shit, that might work great as far as a babyface heel type of dynamic. So,
did Shota and Shingo wrestle each other in the fall?
I
remember they were in that like cluster of people with Zack Sabre Jr. I think they all wrestled back in sequence, and a couple of them wrestled each other. But I'm not necessarily sure Shingo and Shota ever went after each other.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. But so just looking at this, the good news is they have a lot of interesting possibilities. I just don't know if you set up Uemura to be cheered against. They seem to be working very hard to make him someone the crowd is behind. And Goto will be the babyface no matter what. Certainly against Umino. I think they would turn on Umino in a heartbeat for that. Even against Naito, because the sympathy would still be with Goto. Even with Shingo, I think that would be the case. Mm-hmm. Certainly with Zack, we already saw it. They were squarely behind Goto against Zack, and they like Zack. So if that's the case, then I think he's safe. I just don't think you want to put Uemura in that position. So, so I think, say Evil screws over Finlay and knocks him out, and Yuya goes on to the Final Four. I think at that point, a New Japan Cup final between Zack Sabre Jr. and Shingo kind of works, with Shingo getting the victory. Zack's already won the tournament twice, and Shingo goes on against Goto, unless you want to push Umino. That's my thought there.
So Shingo actually lost to Shota Umino in a singles match last year in the G1.
In the G1, yeah. Okay, there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah,
they could go in a lot of different directions right now, and honestly, with 50% of who's left on here, I'm fine with most of it.
Yeah, that was the other thought, is like there aren't a lot of bad answers here.
Right.
And then as Venkin mentions, hey Venkin, glad you're here. Zack Sabre Jr. Taichi, long have we waited. Yeah, this has been teased to us a number of different ways and not quite delivered. And I don't mean that the wrestlers haven't delivered. The company hasn't given us the match. And now we're finally going to get it. I'm pretty fired up about it.
I am too. So there's a guy up in the corner that everyone seems to think is the favorite to win this thing with 50% of the vote at the Sport of Pro Wrestling by the name of David Finlay. Yeah. Steven, is it possible that David Finlay is even working for the company in 2 months?
Sure, it's possible. I mean, it's also possible that he's not. Again, it's another one of these guys. We don't have as much smoke as we do with Jeff Cobb, do we? No. But the Cobb seems a little bit like there's a little bit more there. But we can't discount the idea that Finlay's headed out as well. That's a possibility. We're in the middle of a thing where WWE is working very hard to cut off pipeline talent for AEW. We're seeing this with the WWE ID thing, where they're starting to snatch people off the indies and lock them up and things. And they're just trying to keep any future stars from drifting over AEW's way. Finlay his family has a long history with WWE. So it makes sense from that perspective. Again, we've talked about how he has a pretty young child, and working fewer days,
working at NXT,
working in the United States, probably for a lot of money, sounds pretty damn good when you have a new kid in the house. So you can't discount it. And sides have already thrown around enough money to get Will Ospreay and Okada over. They can certainly afford Finlay as well. So you can't discount it, but we don't know anything until it happens. But it might, again, keep New Japan from totally pulling the trigger on him until they feel like they have him. They protected themselves against this a little bit at Wrestle Kingdom and Wrestle Dynasty. They had him lose to a new Takeshita, somebody who will be around. They knew he was going to be under contract. We just didn't at the time. And then they had him beat a non-New Japan guy in Brody King. So they protected themselves. They're aware of all this. So that might keep him from winning the cup. Perhaps.
I hedge more that Finlay will stick around for just a little while longer.
Okay.
He could be like a next year kind of guy. He's got his brother in NXT right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot where they could be front and center, and he could raise his dollar value if the right stories are happening this year and the right kind of exposure. And there is a sense, and there was a conversation on the Dynamite show last night about whether Okada should have gone to WWE or AEW when he signed. And I am firmly been in the belief that he always should have gone to WWE. And this time in AEW has not convinced me otherwise. I think he would have been motivated. But the deal is WWE is going to offer you less and then dangle the carrot in front of you and then pay you a ton of money when you deliver. And that's how it works. when you proving your value. You're not going to get the big payday that you're going to get at AEW. You might not even get like that big AEW payday. They have a lot of guys there, and they're paying a lot of big contracts, and they haven't even put the world title on a lot of them. So,
yeah, well, and Venkin mentions here, I mean, if Finlay's leaving, you got to start the overthrow. And I think that might be what they're setting up, because you can always, if he stays, if you sign him for another year, you can always have him win the battle with Evil, but he doesn't have to, does he? And it's an interesting thought too, from the WWE perspective. If they want to wait a little while and have him work with his brother, would it be better if he finishes up this year with New Japan, then bring him in after that? There's a lot of layers to this. And right now, WWE is better, not perfect, but better at long-term planning than they used to be. And perhaps they have something in mind for Finlay later, but rather than now. So
right.
Who knows? But again, with his situation, with the child, with the history, you can never discount WWE from getting in the picture.
And speaking of WWE being in the picture, let's pivot to Nakamura, who there are reports that WWE and him may no longer be working together after his contract expires. Steven, if that were the case, what are your thoughts about him doing one more match in New Japan with Tanahashi? Would you want more than that? Or do you think that he is better served working in other promotions?
I don't know. If Nakamura were a free agent, I don't know how New Japan avoids that. I mean, it's just sitting there. It's just sitting there. Nakamura versus Tanahashi one more time. The timing is right. He might be a free agent while Tanahashi is having his final road. How do you not do it? It's just sitting there for you. And it would be a big match. The fans in New Japan, we haven't seen Shinsuke for a very long time in a New Japan ring. There would be a curiosity, even if the match isn't anywhere near what their previous encounters have been. Just the sight of it again would be fascinating. Now,
thinking that it would never have happened, and here we are.
And it can only happen this year. It can only happen this year. It's got to happen. And then
there's a window of like 5 months that we can make this happen, because if he's done in April or May, then you got the 90 days, and then like Tanahashi's not going to be in the G1. So you're looking at somewhere between September and January to make this happen. And I think you can.
It's a hell of a match for King of Pro Wrestling.
You can do it. It's just one of those, like, what do you do after that? Like, is that it for Nakamura too? Is it just like that special marquee match and then peace?
I don't see him working a full-time schedule in New Japan again, because I think one of the reasons he went to WWE in the first place is that the physical style was getting a little more taxing. And we saw that when he went to WWE. He didn't go anywhere near that physical style that he was working. He wouldn't do that in WWE anyway, but you know what I'm talking about.
So let me ask you this. If he does one other match than Tanahashi, one match with any guy on the roster, like you can pick any guy for Nakamura to have one match with in a marquee somewhere, maybe even like Wrestle Kingdom, who is it?
Oh God! I mean, in one guy in New Japan that's not Tanahashi
that you can make off of like a Nakamura match.
Boy, I mean, he hasn't faced anyone in New Japan in so long that any of it is interesting. See, Naito's body is shot. Maybe Goto. Maybe Goto.
You would go with one of the old guys. You wouldn't do one of the new guys.
Not necessarily. I don't know. You sprung that on me. I hadn't thought about it.
I did. We could revisit it last week, but I was thinking a guy like Yota Tsuji and Nakamura could.
Well, yes, because Tsuji would be the one, because he's kind of the new Nakamura with the flamboyant clothes and some of that stuff anyway. But that
would be a Legends match that you never thought could happen. And,
Venkin has it. Shingo. I don't know if we've ever seen that. I don't know if we've ever seen that ever.
Nakamura.
That would be interesting.
You did Shingo and Nakamura at the dome. There it is. Like, what the hell, man?
Well, and that's just it. We don't know what is in store for Nakamura. He's going to have that 90-day thing, so it would have to be in the fall if they're going to do it. Maybe AEW go gets him. Right now,
AEW would throw money at him easily.
It's turning into the WWE Senior Tour anyway.
Yep.
And so, I mean, good Lord, we just had to stomach Copeland and Christian
There's no
Cage
self-control over there.
No, there's not.
They're turning it around. They had a good show.
Well, they always have good pay-per-views. They always have good pay-per-views. It's just a terrible television show.
Yeah, built up a bunch of baby faces. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But
anyway, point being,
a lot of meat at the top.
They could start with some guys that maybe weren't stars 20 years ago for the other guys. That would help. But just looking at this, Shingo would be an interesting idea. But if AEW doesn't take him or whatever, I don't see him working a full-time schedule with anyone. Now, he has worked with Noah the last couple of years, and I think if he works with anybody regularly in Japan, Noah might be the way to go. It does not have the strong style type of thing, and everyone's kind of Nakamura's age there. It's an old roster, and he might fit in with those guys in special occasions. That might be the spot. All Japan is in the middle of a bit of a youth movement. And when I look at Noah, it seems like everybody there is 40
match right there.
40 or 50.
They would bring it. They got Nakajima sometimes. They have Kenta right now. They had tried with Ibushi. There's a track record of them trying to bring in guys that maybe they can get something out of for a reduced price.
Yeah, but if not, the senior tours there at TBS that he can
sure.
But we were talking about it though. It's like with Nakamura, he's had his run in WWE. He's been a babyface. He's been a heel. I don't really know what more you would do with him. He's not really part of the main event mix. So it probably is about time.
There's a lot of hungry people, and he is. You've done pretty much all you're going to do with him. Like you've indicated to everyone that he's not a world title contender. Even though Nakamura was feuding with him right before he won the title, he's just not at that level anymore. I don't want to say he's washed, but he is contributing to the roster at exactly the level that everyone expects him to, including himself.
Yeah, so I'm curious. I would love to see he and Tanahashi one more time, even though I know the match wouldn't be what it used to be. That's a great example. That's just a great possible opponent for him would be Shingo Takagi. I would like that. And you could do it. And the other thing is, we found out officially, we talked about it a little bit last week, his old faction and Okada's old faction CHAOS no longer existing, and neither does GBH, which they mentioned for the past 12 years has only had
like two people left.
Yeah, it's Honma and Makabe, but all of that has been folded into Hantai, into one very large babyface faction now. And,
so everything I've been saying is unofficial for like the last year is now official.
Yeah. Well, they've been rudderless again. It's another one of those factions that's been rudderless since Okada left for the most part. Now Tanahashi officially turned over the faction to Goto. Goto is the recognized official leader of Hantai, and it includes all the CHAOS guys, the two GBH guys, and all the people that were previously in Hantai. It's a big roster there in that group. And
I totally expect a breakup of people off of a faction off of that.
Sure, yeah, they could do things with that. And but what we're going to see later on is a lot of that faction stuff is merchandising. A lot of it is. And I was just there. You didn't see a lot of CHAOS branded merch anymore. You used to see things like CHAOS scarves, things during the Okada and Nakamura days. That's been pretty much over with. Right. The guys have their own merchandise that does well. Yoshihashi has stuff. Goto has stuff. You do see individual merch, and that's doing fine. But you didn't see a lot of the CHAOS stuff. So they're really not sacrificing much of that by folding CHAOS in, and it was probably just time. There really wasn't a function for it anymore.
Cool. I've been saying the faction shakeup should be happening. There's a lot on the heel side that seems like there's tumultuousness. On the face side, there's just everyone occupying the same space, and I think that we have 6 factions right now, and 3 of them have the majority of the roster.
So let's take a look here. Brian Michael Smith, glad you're with us, Brian. He says the King of Pro Wrestling would be the spot for Nakamura and Tanahashi. Timing-wise, makes sense, works. Sure. And Venkin, thanks for mentioning Shingo. That's a really good idea. Good and as you mentioned too, age happens. It does, and we're seeing that with a lot of those guys from Tanahashi's era right now. We've mentioned the Goto is kind of the guy from that group that can really fire on all cylinders still. And he's our world champion right now, and we're all enjoying that run. So, and like I mentioned, the shows this past week, everything is either in tune with what they did last year or up a little bit. So there's still some encouraging signs. We mentioned that we didn't see the greatest week of action in history, but perhaps the semifinals and the finals will be an uptick in that. And we can, and I think we're definitely seeing some angles this week. This House of Torture, War Dogs, Bullet Club thing has a lot of story to go, and it's not going to end at the New Japan Cup. I think this is going to go to Genesis, could go as far as Dominion.
I want to say, like last year around the New Japan Cup, we kind of had the same thoughts about the opening matches, and then it picked up pretty well. So I'm feeling like the same trend will happen this year.
Dontaku. So there's a 2-night Dontaku event coming. There's a lot of plot points to come here. So there's
Dominion. Hey, yo.
Yeah. Oh, and Brian says he's enjoying the show, and we're making great points. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. That's always nice to hear the good feedback, man. We're grateful, and we're glad you're spending your time with us. And
I want validation. Thank you.
It is nice to hear, and we do appreciate it. And one of my favorite things is interacting with people here in the show. It's one of my favorite parts about being live here. So you get to do that.
All right. Well, we get to do it again next week at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, when we come back and talk about the title match and the 4 quarterfinal matches of the New Japan Cup and everything that leads up to it next week here on Speaking of Truck Style.
Plenty of wrestling to watch, so we will be back to talk about. Don't forget Power Bombshells at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sundays, the Dynamite Show, all the other stuff, Fight Game Media Network. So thanks to everyone who joined us here live, all of you who listen to a podcast later. We're grateful for your time. With Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This has been Speaking of Strong Style, and we will talk to you again real soon.